5 years makes such a difference. It might seem strange given how the 3DS is primarily keeping Nintendo afloat nowadays, but there was a time where the future of the company's handheld division was uncertain. 2011 was a very rough start for the system, mostly thanks to the 3D quickly draining the already abysmal battery life, largely defeating the purpose of a dedicated handheld device, the high price point thanks to the expensive screen, and the lack of any system-selling software, not helped by the fact that its predecessor, the Nintendo DS, was still seeing a slew of excellent exclusives, including the 2 newest Pokemon games that made purchasing its successor all the more difficult to justify. This isn't to paint the library as completely barren, as there were a few gems scattered throughout its various ports and remakes, one of those few refuges being Mighty Switch Force for the eShop. When the eShop was, available, that is. While it wasn't quite as bizarre as Mighty Milky Way, the game certainly had its own odd quirks. The final entry in the Mighty trilogy. Seriously, why is there an exclamation mark after Mighty in every single one of these titles? Mighty Switch Force would itself spawn its own trilogy, a franchise boasting 2 sequels that spanned from the 3DS to the Wii U and PC, along with a spin-off on iOS.
The final entry in a trilogy became its own trilogy. Just think about how rare that is for any medium, let alone video games, and that's not even getting into the original's own various releases.
While originally released for the Nintendo 3DS, the game saw an enhanced edition in the form of Mighty Switch Force Hyperdrive Edition for Wii and PC, which featured, among other changes, hand-drawn visuals and remastered levels. For this review, we're going to take a look at the original version, mostly since that's the version of the game that I happen to own. The title starts off with the Hooligan Sisters breaking out of prison to wreak havoc on the citizens by committing horrid crimes such as standing around and chewing bubblegum.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
Those nefarious monsters, they've gone too far this time. Put a stop to them if I can. Yeah, send him in.
Yes, with the most devious criminal minds known to this world on the loose, it's up to Officer Patricia Wagon to put them behind bars once again. Multiple times! With the aesthetic sensibility of Mega Man X, Mighty Switch Force's sole goal is finding all 5 of the sisters in a given level before heading over to her partner and blasting off into the sky, using Wagon's special ability to allow blocks to pop in and out in order to solve various puzzles each level presents, all while trying to achieve an ideal completion time. As the conclusion to the Mighty Trilogy, Switch Force is notable for returning to the concept of changing the surrounding environment a la Mighty Flip Chance, albeit Switch Force shows a more focused and far less confusing approach than Flip did. As the conclusion to the Mighty Trilogy, Switch Force is notable for returning to the concept of changing the surrounding environment a la Mighty Flip Chance, albeit Switch Force shows a more focused and far less confusing approach than Flip Chance did. It's a little too tight at times with how rigid a reflex testing can be. In Incident 4, you need to switch in order to get a bomb to go off in order to nab a Hooligan Sister right at the start of the level. Unless you go in knowing that you'll need to switch the blocks up the very second it starts, you've only got a split second to process everything and react. Moments like these, where precious seconds are whittled away by one's woeful excuse of a reaction time, wouldn't have been as big of an issue had it not been for a distinctively obnoxious design choice. The clock. That menacing monster of a clock, mockingly ticking away as you try to achieve part-time. This might not seem as prominent a problem as it sounds, but like an itch on your back when you're trying to make a back scratcher, it's hard to simply focus on the task at hand when said task is constantly reminding you of that little pest, even appearing during your first time going through each level. The levels all have this Eureka-esque design, where it's euphoric to swap from one platform to the next once you discover the right solution, which makes the part-time all the more irritating when it's reminding you of your every constant failure, taunting you with how close you would be to beating it the 43rd time if your right digits weren't so decrepitly sluggish to react to that one moment where the enemy is perfectly in place to be crushed by a box. Had the part-times been relegated to the post-game, i.e. once the player has a better grasp on the mechanics, a la the ghosts in Mario Kart, it wouldn't have been the main pain that they are in Mighty Switch Force, especially considering that the reward amounts to nothing more than fan service, which, let's be frank, Wayforward's games are in no shortage of that. Thus, the ultimate payoff for perfect part times isn't particularly pleasing. Interestingly enough, the 3DS version's level design was toned back because the studio's often credited tyrannical overlord, Oldie Way, had trouble beating the game, and director Austin Ivansfist wanted to make a game that everyone could beat. With the original 3DS version, we wanted anyone and everyone to be able to complete all of the incidents. We spent days going over the final stage alone, and cut a decent number of block arrangements and spikes to make the game easier. As a level designer, it was hard to kill my darlings the first time around. Complete them all? definitely a possibility. Complete them with part-time, not so much. Which isn't what he was saying, but that's not the point. While one might be tempted to compare it to Kirby, since the game mechanics are easy to understand and it is challenging to beat, but difficult to master, a more apt comparison would be Super Ghouls and Ghosts. If you know where to jump and shoot, you're golden. If you don't, get ready to memorize every pixel on screen at taking a stab at those part-times, because there is very little patience for errors of any kind. One simple screw-up can cost you the part-time, which can lead to quite a number of frustrating retrials or disappointing commitments to finishing a level with terrible timing. The players actually have to be as carefully crafted as the designs of the level they're going through if they want to have a chance of keeping their eye on the birdie, or at the very least, keeping it on par.
On the subject of restarting a level, I should point out that, well, this version of Mighty Switch Force, this is the post-2012 patch version of the game. As in, it's enhanced. The original game had even less content, plus it lacked the ability to quickly restart a level, meaning if you wanted to practice for part-time, well, it was an even greater pain to have to start a level all over again.
As frustrating as this aspect can be, and let's be clear, it can be incredibly frustrating. Mighty Switch Force does display some other smart design choices, like say how the gun functions. It comes across as an extension of the puzzle mechanics, i.e. it's more useful as a tool to solve a puzzle than an outright weapon to attack enemies, although it does play a part in some less than riveting areas that amount to rapidly tapping the fire button rather than a mixture of fast-paced platforming and block-popping puzzles. Speaking of firearms, there is a more powerful variant that's a luck once you beat the game, but it once again raises the question of why the part-times weren't left until after the game was beaten if they're going to give you a weapon that can help shave off those few precious seconds needed to score under par, though this might have been due to the prominence of levels that can be beaten without firing a single shot.
A police officer not needing to use lethal force in order to resolve a dilemma that doesn't call for it. I don't know if this was intentional social commentary on Wayforward's part, but if it was, it's surprisingly topical. Sadly.
On the subject of surprises, Mighty Switch Force and Seagull are one of the few games well worth playing with a 3D on, as seeing the different layers of blocks and moving parts pop in and out helps add to the sense of the environment has been shaken up with a simple flick of a switch. It's still one of the best uses of the system's gimmicky selling point to this very day. To say nothing of sporting, yet another fantastically detailed showcase of Wayforward sprite work, albeit one whose visuals are woefully lacking in charm. Patricia Wagon in particular just doesn't have the same level of personality as Luna did in Mighty Milky Way, or even as much as she would have in Mighty Switch Force 2, though the various stills at the very least make an admirable attempt. The soundtrack, on the other hand, fares far better, as Jake Cobbin has composed yet another energetic set of tracks whose enjoyment stretches out from the first level to the last.
Mighty Switch Force 1 it's fine, it's well presented, the level design is solid, and it packs yet another powerful presentation into an overall fun yet small package. Still, it doesn't quite match the obscenely memorable nature of its predecessor, nor does it hold a candle to its sequel. That's all for now, folks. Tune in tomorrow where we conclude this wonderful week of Wayforward with the original Shantae. 3. Oh, hey, Nitro. Wait. Who are you?
I'm your worst nightmare brought to life.
You know, you're not exactly Donald Trump becoming the next president of the United States levels of scary. Or in Canadian terms, Kelly Leach becoming Prime Minister. Both are equally terrifying, just in their own special ways.
You didn't really think that people were just gonna let you forget that a certain you-know-who hired Wayforward to make a game? No.
I said I would never talk about them again. So why don't you—
Oh, but you will, Kaz. You most certainly will. Unless you want something to happen to that precious little dog of yours.
You sick, twisted bastard. Oh, there you are. Oh, I missed you. Where did you go? Oh, look at you. Look at you. Look at you, you silly animal. Oh. So, not sure we're on the same page. Are we going to be collaborating next time, or are we going to be enemies?
Tomorrow you shall feast on Contra 4.
Ha! Joke's on you. I already sold my copy of Book of Memory. Damn it.
That ending bit came courtesy of Nitro Rad, who was incredibly helpful for this video on such a short notice. Thank you so much for your help. If you haven't checked out their content already, definitely do so. They do great reviews of obscure platformers, more recent indie titles, and very thorough retrospectives on some of the more unappreciated series like Rayman or Siren. Once again, a big thanks and shout out to Nitro Rad. I couldn't have done this video without you. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, as always, game on, my friends.